Today's reading is from Rays of the One Light, Weekly Commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita by J. Donald Walters. Week 17, How High Should We Aspire? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it and your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramahansa Yogananda. The passage this week is from the Gospel of St. Matthew, chapter 5. I say unto you, that except your righteousness shall exceed the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, ye shall in no case enter into the kingdom of heaven. The easiest explanation for these words is that they were spoken in criticism of the scribes and Pharisees, particularly since Jesus was often verbally attacked by them and stood up to them fearlessly. However, it wouldn't have been much of a challenge to the disciples who aspired to spiritual perfection to tell them, don't be like those who lack any such aspiration. Jesus, in fact, says only a few verses later, be ye therefore perfect, even as your Father which is in heaven is perfect. What Jesus was referring to here then was the self-righteousness of the priests. Don't seek perfection, he was saying to his disciples, in the image you project toward others. Don't be satisfied with a goodness born merely of ego definitions. The highest virtue is to transcend the very thought of personal virtue in the realization of God alone as the doer. Before this realization, even the thought, I am kind, or I am truthful, is self-limiting. As it says in the Bhagavad Gita, the 7th chapter, yet hard the wise Mahatma is to find, that man who saith, all is Vasudev. Thus through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Welcome. My name is Prem-Shanti. This is my husband, Om Prakash, and we're happy to be sharing Sunday service with you. And with all those on streaming, hello. Today's topic is a wonderful one. We chanted at the beginning when we had our meditation, the chant that Yogananda gave called In the Land Beyond My Dreams. And that chant, he said you could chant it to consciously ascend to God. And when we're trying to reach such a high point in our lives as perfection, chanting can be half the battle, Yogananda said. And he gave us lots of chants and lots of reasons to chant them. And one of the reasons that we chant is that it opens our heart. And then, of course, because we come from spirit, and spirit is not just light, spirit is love, a state of calmness, peace, energy, wisdom, truth, lots of things that Yogananda described spirit as. That spirit flowing through us, when we awaken that energy with chanting and with other spiritual practices, we come closer to that spirit and we start to feel it flowing through us. As the chant we chanted at the beginning, what is this life flowing through my veins? Can it be other than the divine? In thy light, in thy love, in thy joy, I am one. I am one with the infinite Om. And so that's part of our job, is to go Om. And oh, I know, pretty bad. When I was listening and preparing for the service this week, I was listening to an older talk that Swami Kriyananda, Ananda's founder, gave. And in it he was talking about the two forces in nature that God, in order to present us with a world, there had to be duality. And the one force is, of course, the satanic force, actually, which is the force that pulls us outward. And Swami Kriyananda had a very interesting way of talking about this force through a song that I've asked Om Prakash to do for us. He didn't know I was going to do it this soon, I don't think. The song is entitled Devil Worship.
This is a song that's sort of a different message than devil worship.
It has the antidote.
And you can all join on, many of you know this song. And it goes, what we need is light. Try that with me. What we need is light. Brother, I've a faint suspicion you and I've been led astray, taught to drive the devil from us. We've invited him to stay. Here comes. What we need is light, for we can't drive out the darkness with a stick, with a stick. No, we can't drive out the devil with a stick. Some proclaim all men are sinners, can't escape the devil's might. How their interest must intrigue him, they won't let him out of sight. What we need is light, for we can't drive out the darkness. Talking sin, talking sin. No, we can't drive out the devil talking sin. Some of us were taught the slogan, social evils must be slain. But can anger drive out sorrow? How can passion conquer pain? What we need is light, for we can't drive out the darkness when we hate, when we hate. No, we can't drive out the devil when we hate. Brother, have you ever wondered why the darkness lingers on? If we want to see the sunrise, let us turn and face the dawn. What we need is light, for we'll only best the darkness when we love, when we love. Yes, we'll only best the dark devil when we love.
So when we want to learn how to feel God flowing through us, we can know that God is the doer when we feel that energy. And so we need to tune ourselves not just to music, which is uplifting music, of course, and it's very helpful, but we also want to attune ourselves to those who have that truth already flowing through them. And so I wanted to give a story from Yogananda, who is the master whose teachings we follow here. I also want to include a story from Swami Kriyananda, who was Ananda's founder and lived with Yogananda and was trained by him. And then if I have time, I'll say some other things. So first of all, this is a story that Yogananda used to tell, and it's one of my favorite ones. When he was touring the United States, he used to have crowds come in the thousands to see this orange-robed Indian man and he was so dynamic and so filled with God's power and God's love that he just drew people magnetically. And he always had a story or two to tell folks, and it's very endearing. This one is called The Hunter Who Became a Saint. And this takes place in India, and he put it in Bengal, the jungles of Bengal, which is near where Yogananda grew up. And this hunter was a very evil man. He wasn't in touch with nature. He wasn't into sustainability. He wasn't into nonviolence. He just wanted to go out and kill all the animals that he could, and he very much enjoyed it. Well, pretty soon, because of his vibration, all of the animals started running away from him. And he got angrier and angrier as nobody befriended him, as he had no one to be with and no one to hunt. He got madder and madder. And then one day he was charging through the jungle, and he looked at this pond, and he saw this orange-robed Indian man going into the pond very quietly, and he held up his arms, sort of like St. Francis, And all the birds came to him, and all the animals were coming down to the water to drink of the water. And he thought, aha, I wonder, I could make those animals come to me. I'll just dress up like that saint. And so he watched, and he was pretty fascinated by how much those animals came to the saint. So then the saint disappears into the forest, and the next morning he appears dressed up in this orange robe, and he goes, and underneath his robe he's hiding knives and all these things because he thinks he's going to kill the animals again. Well, he gets into the water, and he holds up his hand, and the birds start coming, and the animals start coming, and he looks into the eyes of these innocent, trusting little animals, and something happened to his heart. He just couldn't do it. He couldn't kill them anymore. And so he looked at that, and he looked at the animals, and he thought to himself, sort of a wonderful soul awakening moment for himself. He thought, now if I can attract animals, even though I'm not worthy of being like that saint, I have this saint's robe on, but if I can attract the animals just by that, what would happen in my life if I really tried to be better, and I was better inside as well as wearing this orange robe that makes me look and act like a saint and have these animals come to me? Maybe I could help people as well. And so he goes through a number of years imitating this saint underneath the orange robe, and he feels this change happening in his heart. He eventually becomes a very revered teacher, and he does indeed help many people. And Yogananda said, remember what this means. If you are trying to be good, it's okay if there's still some flaws inside yourself. It's not being hypocritical to take on the garb of being good. It's not being hypocritical. In fact, it's wonderful to be around others who are also attempting to raise themselves into a higher state of consciousness, because their magnetism, of course, will help you on your way. And then he also said something I think is really important for us to remember, that as we're moving along the path to goodness and to sainthood, because that's all of us are on that journey, that we shouldn't also judge others who are also trying to do the same thing, especially if we see them with a fault. Because just because we're all moving in the right direction doesn't make us saints yet. We're saints in the making. And he said, but that's a way that we can help each other as a community and as our world. So that's one beautiful story from Yogananda. And then from Swami Kriyananda, he wrote a story that is also one of my favorites in his book called God is for Everyone. In the story, it's a father and a son, and it's also in India, and they're going to take their donkey to the market to sell. And so they're walking along, and they decide not to ride the donkey because they want the donkey to be in really good shape and not tired by the time they get to the market, because they want to get a good price for him. So they're walking along, and they go across one group of people, and these people whisper, look at that perfectly strong little donkey, and those two fools are just walking by inside. And he hears the people's voices, and he thinks, well, yeah, I guess it does look sort of foolish for us to be walking. Well, I'll get up. And so he starts to ride the donkey. He gets on the donkey, and they're going along. He passes another group of people. This group of people says, oh, look at that man. He's nice and strong. He's riding on the donkey, and his poor little son is there walking in the dirt. What a fool he is, and so arrogant. He thought, gosh, I don't want to be thought that arrogant. He gets off the donkey. Then he thinks, okay, well, let's both get on. No, he says, let you get on. So he gets on, and I've got this mixed up already. Sorry. They both get on. Let's just skip that part. So they both get on. And they go by another group of people, and the group of people says, look at that poor little donkey. Under so much weight. How could they be so cruel to him? By this time, he's just like, oh my gosh, I can't please anybody. He comes to a bridge, and he pushes the donkey over the bridge, and they just start walking on. Now, for many years, I hated this song, this story, because I thought that poor donkey. But Swami, in his usual way, always brought us to the highest. And he said, reader, if you don't like the ending to this story, maybe it's a test for you. He says, can't you imagine that little donkey just swimming happily away, free? But also, the moral of the story is, once you decide what your spiritual path is and you're walking that path to your freedom, try not to listen to other voices that might be discouraging to you. Try to live from your center and feel that contact with God. If you feel that contact with God and you feel that joy flowing through you, if you feel that the practices that you are doing are bringing you increased peace, are helping you in your life, then keep going on that path steadfastly, not being swayed right or left or right or wrong by what others say necessarily. And then, as we are talking about this, the idea of the energy flowing through you, it's very, very important to put yourself in places where you can feel that energy. That's one of the reasons we come together at Sunday service, is that each one of us has a certain amount of magnetism and focus. And when we all come together as a group, it lifts all of us. But it's also, and of course this temple's been blessed many times, and there's been lots of meditation here. So it can be a place where you can come into that energy and take it into your life. But then it's also wonderful to go on pilgrimage. And you know, we're getting ready to take a pilgrimage soon. In, what month is it? In October, Freeman and Padma are organizing a pilgrimage down to all of the holy places in the Los Angeles area and Southern California for Yogananda. And I had the great good fortune to go to some of those places before. And when I went to the Lake Shrine, which is one of the places that we'll go, there's an area, it's a beautiful lake. If you've read The New Path, Swami Kriyananda talks in that book about what it was like to be one of the monks helping to make that lake shrine come into being, and how they placed, there's a big statue of Jesus on the top of this water fountain, this waterfall that goes down into the lake. And right across from that Jesus is a houseboat. And Yogananda used to go into samadhi all the time in that houseboat. That was one of the places he secluded and was in very high states of consciousness. He also blessed the water that's in that lake. And he consciously did that for all of us who would be coming later to come to that lake and feel that vibration flowing through us. Well, I went to Lake Shrine and I got to sit right at the bench that's right near the little houseboat, looking right at the Jesus, and I just started meditating there. And I was very, very new on the path when this happened. And I went to a state of consciousness. I wish I could go into it again, but I knew that it was a blessing from being in the vibration where the Master was. And then another time, I went to the Biltmore Hotel, which on the pilgrimage we'll be going to the Biltmore Hotel. We'll actually have several nights there, I believe. And that hotel was where Yogananda stayed many times when he was in Los Angeles. But it was also the place where he left his body consciously. And you know, those vibrations from a great master last forever. And they have remodeled that hotel, but they didn't remodel the place where Yogananda stood and he had his final exit. So when we went there, I just decided I was going to stand right on that spot. And I stood on that spot, and I felt like I plugged my body into an electric socket. That's what it felt like. Just this vibration went up my spine, and I could just feel this kind of joyous energy flowing through me that lasted for days after that, just feeling that upliftment and joy coming from it. So if you want to, like I said, if you want to attune yourselves to the masters, put yourself where they are. But you also can enter into that state in your own meditations. It's very highly recommended that you make an altar and that you have the pictures of the masters that you revere there. And if in times of trouble, that you actually consciously call on them and gaze into their eyes, draw their vibration to you. But most of all, draw them with the love of your heart. Because devotion is the thing that really opens us more and more. And we just start with a little bit, because sometimes our hearts can just open a little bit. But every little bit, God reads and God accepts. And God will help you to expand that and have that devotion and love flow into your life. So that every time you have a trial or a trouble, because that's what happens when we live in this world, trials and troubles have to come to us. But if we have our hearts tuned to the Masters, to our goal of being a saintly person or a good person at least, we have those things in mind for us, then when we meditate, every time we meditate, we can come closer to that goal. Every time we remember to call on God's presence when we're going through something, it strengthens us. Yogananda actually said that every time we have a kind thought, the life force rises in the chakras up to the higher places. Every time we meditate, we're actually regrooving the thoughts in our brain. And he said, the more that you can have your mind be here at the point between the eyebrows, the spiritual eye, the star of the east, the more that energy will rise in you. And you will find that for longer and longer periods of time, no matter what's happening in your life, whatever is coming to you, you'll feel that calmness. You'll feel that peace. You'll feel that love and the joy that's available to each of us because it's what we are. Self-realization is the knowing in all parts of the body, mind, and soul that we are now in the presence of the infinite Lord. We need not pray that it comes to us. We are that already. All we have to do is improve our knowing. So by chanting, by loving each other, by acts of compassion and service, by attuning ourselves to saints and holier people, people who have been on the path longer than us, asking them for help, and by drawing on whatever masters that you revere, whether it be Jesus or Yogananda, Buddha, whoever it is, if you consciously learn to draw that life to you and see that life flowing through you as you serve others and as you live your life, then we will come closer and closer to that perfection, which is our birthright. Namaste.